This morning, today, in Melbourne, we had one firebombing of a cafe, and another cafe or business was shot by bullets from a passing car early this morning. Victoria remains a mafia state.
ワールドストラテジー世界の読み方、山岡鉄秀です。皆さんこんにちは。今日のスペシャルゲストは元オーストラリアシドニー2000年オリンピック担当大臣のアンドリュー・トムソンさんです。トムソンさんとは個人的にずっと懇意にさせていただいておりまして、この本ですね、トムソンさんの著書、私が編集翻訳を担当して出版いたしました。先日ですね、安倍晋三回顧展に行ってきたんですけども、その展示の中に安倍総理の事務所の再現がございました。安倍総理が実際に使っていたデスク、そしてその後ろにある本棚、その本棚の中の書物も忠実に再現されていたんですが、この本がその中にありました。私自身が安倍総理にお会いした時に直接手渡ししたんですけれども、その本棚の中にしっかりと置かれていたことを大変嬉しく思いました。トムソンさんはオーストラリア連邦政府の閣僚だったわけですけれども、お父様が全英オープン5回優勝のレジェンドプロゴルファーのピーター・トムソンさんであるということでもよく知られています。現在トムソンさんはメルボルンのご自宅にいらっしゃいますけれども、今オーストラリアで起きているさまざまなこと、特にビクトリア州メルボルンにおける治安の急速な悪化、これが大量の無秩序な移民政策によってもたらされたものであるという事実、ビクトリア州の労働党政権が長きにわたって一体何をしてこのような結果に帰着しているのか。そしてですね、このイラン戦争を経たアメリカとのオーカス、これはアメリカ、イギリス、オーストラリアのアングロサクソン軍事同盟ですけれども、その内容が大幅にダウングレードされるという事件がありました。これはアメリカ側の供給能力の低下に伴うものです。それによってオーカスのみならず日本、台湾を含めたこの地域の安全保障環境が悪化するという事態に見舞われています。日本はどう対処すべきなのか、オーストラリアに何ができるのか、また共に何ができるのか、そういった日本にとっても切実な問題をトムソンさんとお話しさせていただきたいと思います。Okay, Thompson-san.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm sorry I'm not in Japan to sit in the studio with you, but I'm here in Australia, so I can report directly from here and describe the situation in Australia, I hope, very clearly.
Yes. The recent news from Australia is quite concerning, especially Melbourne, Victoria. The security is worsening because of the violent crimes happening almost every day. So would you tell us what's going on there?
Well, the problem with crime in the city of Melbourne really began with unconditional and very large-scale immigration of people from very dangerous parts of the world, in particular the Middle East and parts of Africa. Now, here in Victoria, we have had a left-wing Labor Party government for really the last 25 years. with one small 3-year period exception. Now, the left faction of the Labor Party, that is the radical faction of the Labor Party, really took over this government around about 2012, 2013, and they began appointing judges who were very left-wing. So when these judges, who are now still there, when they conduct a trial of a young person, a young criminal, they usually hand out very light penalties. They very rarely send them to prison. So what this approach from the judiciary has caused is a culture of crime where there are many repeat offenders. Now, you take that culture and you match it with organized crime, mainly based among Middle East, that is Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, these kind of immigrants. And you have a recipe for disaster. And that disaster happens every day, as you say. This morning, today, in Melbourne, we had one firebombing of a cafe, and another cafe or business was shot by bullets from a passing car early this morning. This happens every day now in Melbourne.
Jesus. In general, the Australian migration policy has been considered successful compared to other countries. Well, Australia is designed to be the country of migrants, at least since 1970s, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And then it's been considered successful because of the Australian unique system to intake migrants, which is based on skills of people, not the color of skin, religion, or anything like that, but purely the skills. So basically, Australia wants to take people who possess skills that are lacking in Australia, and therefore, a certain qualification and experiences or language competence and so on are required. So that creates the decent migration policy for Australia. So that's why we have seen less crimes, less violent or serious crimes in Australia compared to other migrant countries like United States. Right? But according to what I hear from you, the Victorian government, which is a Labour government, has been violating that policy. So is that right?
Not quite. The migration policy is decided by the federal government of Australia.
Okay. Yeah.
And what happened was that going back about 20 years, the definition of a refugee expanded very much. And so very large numbers of so-called refugees were allowed to come in without the skills from parts of Africa where there was civil war, such as Sudan, and parts of the Middle East where there was constant trouble, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, for example. So the old system of skills, which is a condition of becoming an immigrant, was essentially thrown away. So you had many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people coming in, claiming refugee status, and entering society in Melbourne, Sydney, elsewhere, with no skills. And of course, eventually they settle, they have very low-paying jobs, they then have children, and the crime starts. So it was really the definition of a refugee which expanded, and you saw the same thing happen in the United States with the Democrat Party and in the UK with the British Labour Party, and you get what is called replacement theory. So eventually these refugees take citizenship, they begin to vote in large numbers, and based on their ethnic identity, they're easy to organize to vote in favor of the left-wing party. So it's become really a political sort of system using the refugee definition as an illegitimate tool to keep your party in power.
I see. It's a migration issue, but it's been done by the name of refugee to start with.
Yes, refugee is the biggest category, and then they have another category called family reunion.
Okay.
So if you take one refugee in, you then say, well, what about my mother, my aunt, my father, my cousin, and they all come in.
I see. But then why the problems is so evident, so obvious in Victoria, Melbourne? Is that because of the attitude of the state government?
Well, the attitude of the state government obviously welcomes these refugee family reunion immigrants because they eventually start voting, and they vote 80% for the Labor Party. But it also it creates a lot of economic momentum around construction because you have to build new houses. But of course, we can't build houses fast enough. So, for example, the average rent compared to the average income in Victoria, the average rent is about 55% of income. So that's very high. If to pay a rent, not to buy a house, just to pay a rent, you need more than half your income. The state of Victoria, where Melbourne is the capital, is essentially a mafia state. Now, it's run by a mafia of organized criminals and labor union bosses. They control everything. The police can't do much because the judges will not punish crime severely enough, and the state government earns money from it. So until we have a change of government at a general election, Victoria remains a mafia state.
Well,
and everybody knows it. The newspapers, the media, everybody knows it. And very interesting that after Donald Trump was elected for the second time, or I should say, after he was elected for the third time, but he became president for the second time, he shut the border and he cracked down on the import of drugs. So the market for drugs in America became very difficult for the cartels. Where did those drugs go? A lot of them are now in Australia. Australians pay the highest price in the world for cocaine. It's amazing. So a lot of the drug smuggling has now changed from America across the Pacific into Australia.
You mean the crossing the Pacific Ocean is a lot, should be more difficult because the bringing all those drugs into United States was a sort of matter of crossing the borders between the United States and Mexico or Canada. But crossing the ocean should be much harder. Is Australian border control not working?
Well, the container traffic, as I understand it, from the United States, or from, say, Latin America, South America to Australia, is shipped via Singapore, Philippines. But there's another thing is that the South Pacific island countries they have very weak governments, and there's a lot of corruption there, and a lot of the economy is run by Chinese companies. Now, that's a fact. So you have a strange coincidence of a lot of Chinese companies running businesses in places like Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, etc., and you have an increasing drug trade from Latin America through those countries. Now, I wonder, is that just a coincidence, or am I being too suspicious? Anyway, the point is the market for drugs in Australia is now being targeted by cartels in South America who are having more difficulty selling into the United States. Now, look, good on Trump. He's doing the right thing to protect his people from drugs. But, we're getting the adverse consequences of that. And we have a flourishing organized crime system here. Used to be Italian. These days, it's largely Middle Eastern, Iraqi, Lebanese, Syrian, that sort of people.
How do you compare that to not only the situation in United States, but also the European countries? Are they experiencing the similar things? And do you think this particular, say, scheme, the migrant, refugees, and drugs influx, all sorts of things look very similar, and then happening all over the world? It looks like. What do you think?
Well, it's the same trend. The only thing is that Australia is an island, so it's much easier to protect against illegal arrivals by boat. But we in Australia, we look at Europe and Britain, and we are just stunned at how weak they are at border control. It is quite extraordinary to see these boats crossing from France into Britain, all with what they call military-age males. There's no girls among them, and they come in day after day, week after week. Same in Europe. Some European countries are taking a stronger stance than others, of course. Poland is a wonderful example. They protect their borders, but the southern European borders, where Africa is so close, they're extraordinarily vulnerable, and they seem to do very little to stop it. The other thing is the rise of the new political parties, the very conservative anti-immigrant parties, AfD in Germany, Marine Le Pen in France, Reform in the UK. It's amazing how bitterly they are opposed by the mainstream media. And the incumbent parties are doing everything possible, misusing the law to try and stop these parties from gaining government, winning government, and dealing with the immigrant crisis. And it's very similar here in Australia.
Oh, it's similar. The similar thing is happening in the Australian mainstream media.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have a party that's been around for 30 years. It's called One Nation.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very similar to Sanseito or Nihon Hoshuto, maybe. It's run by a very brave woman, 30 years of history. Pauline Hanson. And her party is now number one in the opinion polls. People are now realizing the only hope to save this country is to have that party, One Nation, in government, either as a majority or as a coalition member.
Yeah, the Pauline Hanson's One Nation party gaining that popularity in Australia now, that surprised me a bit. ご視聴ありがとうございました。いいねボタン、配布ボタン、そしてチャンネル登録をよろしくお願いいたします。また皆さんのご意見をコメント欄でお待ちしております。ワールドストラテジー、世界の読み方、山岡鉄秀でした。